stream going. My name's Moshe. I'm coming to you from Israel in the Galilee. And what we're going to cover today is what's going on with Trump and his ceasefire. And he basically is telling me that he's telling everybody the deal with Iran is off. And um, we'll get into that. And then I'm going to show you and illustrate to you how the Bible twisting of the translation happens and how it traces back to the underlying Greek and Hebrew. And I'm going to show it to you graphically. And let me jump into the live stream and make sure things are actually functioning, or I'll have to get on the chat with YouTube while the live stream is running. It looks like it's going. Looks like it's going. Looks like it's going. There's people that don't like us that make the problems. Okay. People that don't like us that make the problem. Okay. All right. Let me get my post up here. It'll take a few seconds while people are coming in. Almost there. Almost there. Okay, let me get it pinned up. And we're there. Let's see, typos. No typos. No typos. And I'll pin it up. I got to get the control for the pinning up. There it is. Okay, it looks good. And people coming in. Okay. Let me do some praise, being a Bible believing site. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay, so let me get you the details of what happened with Trump and the ceasefire. It's rather um, weird, but the whole situation with Trump and the Iranian ceasefire is weird, but it got weirder. This is more weird. So it reached a new level of wackoness, okay? And it's probably both of them doing it, but the Iranians certainly are very guilty. Um, Trump said there's no deals with the Iranians. The Iranians launched a number of drones at ships from India last night in the Persian Gulf, and the America says all the American warships took down the drones. Um, I'm sure India is very ticked off about this, and if it gets under Modi's skin enough, he'll start doing things about it, and he's not going to necessarily coordinate with Trump. He's going to likely tell Trump what he intends to do. but he's not going to ask permission. This guy tries to walk softly, but this is a bad provocation, I'm afraid, and he might start rising up. I hope he does. The attack on the ships from India is not why Trump says the deal is that's an add-on. Okay. Uh, um, they came up with releasing to the media a set of conditions uh, to enter into a 60-day period of negotiations that were not really true. Um, and the media buys anything. Now, Trump, I don't know. Trump released it Friday after the markets closed. He said, the Iranians are making this stuff up. Well, he did wait till the markets closed uh, before he came up with this release. Um, it doesn't mean that Trump is not is going to go to war right now. It really doesn't mean that. It probably means Iran will, which, as the dominoes fall, it would not imply, it would really mandate that Trump uh, gets into it also. I mean, how could he, admittably, he has to defend himself because they're going to be attacking his bases and things like that. So I should explain to you what it is with some specificity that the Iranians were slinging the bull with. Uh, and I'll cover this with you. Um, before I start covering it, I want to tell you some of the other things the Iranians are saying. Um, Chief of Staff for the Iranian army says, our forces control the Strait of Hormuz, which means no ship can pass through without our permission. Member, that sounds like a typo. A member of the Iranian negotiating teams, Amir Hossein Yazababubu, says, I don't know, guys, I can't pronounce it. No military ship will pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and movement will only be allowed for commercial ships in accordance with Iranian arrangements and supervision. Well, that sounds to me with arrangements, that doesn't mean booking a transit time. That means money, paying tolls. Okay, so are they making a mockery of Trump at this point? Yes. Trump said he was very upset and angry. Um, that means they're saying Trump shall not control the Persian Gulf. And while I don't think Trump's ships loiter in the Persian Gulf day and night, I think they do occasionally go in there. They escort ships and stuff like that. So, what all does this mean? It means Iran's gonna run American ships out of the region, or they plan on, or hope to, or going to try to. There's different ways they could try it. Naval mines extensively making a pattern, and they got to escort the boats through there. But once they did that, the Americans would have drones reconnaissing, doing a reconnoiter, I should say, and find the map. They'd make their own map to get through. But that's dangerous because the map could change anytime. They just lay more mines. Okay. The Iranians published the following, and I'll go through it with you, and I'll tell you what Trump was saying is false. Okay, they gave this to uh, different media. I don't know the specific names of the media, but it was multiple. Okay, this is 14 points. I'll go through it quickly. Immediate and a permanent ceasefire in all areas, including Lebanon. Now, I'll keep going. An American commitment not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs and to respect the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic. They went on to say that America will force Israel to not attack Lebanon. And it implied it would also mean Hamas, too. And Trump adamantly denied that. He said there was nothing ever written down in our proposals that he was seeing about forcing Israel to stop fighting in Lebanon. Because, their commitment to Israel has been constantly saying Israel has a right to defend itself, okay? Just like America does. They've never tried to take that away from Israel. So, if Hezbollah decided to enter into a ceasefire with Israel, which has never happened, it's not happening in these recent times, that would be one thing, but that's not the case. They're not doing it. And they're not respecting any ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. So Trump's not very interested in that. A complete lifting of the naval blockade within 30 days. Trump's not so high on that one either. An American commitment to withdraw its forces from the areas adjacent to Iran. Well, adjacent to Iran would mean like Afghanistan, and we don't have bases. America doesn't have bases in Afghanistan. It really means Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, and probably Saudi Arabia. That's what it's really meaning. And Trump, of course, isn't doing that. He's basically handing the Middle East oil over to Iran, which will cripple the world and cause all kinds of rising oil prices, which Trump's trying to fight against. The reopening of the Straits of Hormuz within 30 days in accordance with Iranian arrangements. So, according with Iranian arrangements, they're saying they're in control of the Persian Gulf. Suspending sanctions on the sale of oil, petrochemical products and their derivatives, and granting Iran full access to its financial resources. Now, that would be before a permanent ceasefire. Do you understand how silly it is? Okay. Obligating the United States and its allies to present plans for the reconstruction of Iran in the amount of no less than $300 billion. In terms of reconstruction, Trump denied this completely. And Trump said the only thing we'll do is if we get into the 60-day ceasefire, this could be discussed. Um, I don't see Trump being very excited about this. Verse 8. 60 days of negotiations to reach a final agreement based on nuclear issues, complete lifting of primary and secondary U.S. sanctions, and the revocation of resolutions and measures of the UN Security Council and the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Well, Trump can't tell the UN what to do. This is absurd. Okay. Um, it could be vetoed. I mean, they could veto it, other countries. Reaffirmation of Iran's commitment within the framework of the Treaty on the Non Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, not to produce. Okay, I think they're saying that they might not produce nuclear weapons, which is nonsense anyway. What nuclear weapons are we talking about? Iran doesn't have any. So they're going to give up something they don't have. During the negotiation period, the U.S. will commit not to increase its forces in the region and not to impose new sanctions. Release of 24 billion in frozen Iranian funds during the 60 days of final negotiations, with half of the amount to be made available to Iran even before the talks begin. So, as a precondition to agreeing to the talks, they want $12 billion. You got it? Establishment of a monitoring mechanism for the implementation of the agreement. All right. 13. Adoption of the final agreement through a resolution of the UN Security Council. So they're trying to take it away from Trump's hands so Trump can't turn around and say, Iran broke the agreement, we're going after them. So when Iran breaks the agreement, which Iran will do, Trump will have to go to the UN Security Council and get approval to take action against Iran, and China and Russia will veto it. So Iran will be able to get away with breaking the agreement all they want. You understand? The final negotiations will not begin until half of the frozen funds are released, sanctions on Iran are suspended, and the naval blockade is lifted. According to the source, the same thing. The final agreement will be limited to discussing the issue of enriched materials and nuclear enrichment, the lifting of sanctions, and a plan for Iran's economic rehabilitation. While the Iranian missile program and support for resistance organizations have been completely removed from the agreement. Okay. So Trump is, I'll give you an idea what Trump is saying. Okay. He's really ticked off at what they did. Um, the word for peace talks now, what is like stall, you know. Trump says the terms that Iran leaked out. This is Trump's official statement. You know, it may be in his social media, but it's Trump. Um, Leaked out to the fake news have nothing to do with the terms that were agreed to in writing. What they said, including their weak and pathetic statement on having a deal, bears no relation to the truth. Uh, Very dishonorable people to deal with. They're not liking that. With with them, there is no such thing as dealing in good faith. That's just true. They just want to take advantage of them. If they can't make advantage and leverage things heavily in their favor, they won't make a deal. They'll just keep waiting. Amazing. Also, their totally rebuffed drone attack last night again. India, Indian, I mean India ships having the Hormuz, leaving the Hormuz Strait is totally unacceptable. But what did you do about it, Trump? Nothing. They better get their act together and fast. They are not believing he's going to do anything serious. They don't take it seriously. Believe me. Um, and then Trump goes on with the details. He says the nuclear issue remains untouched. No agreement is made regarding the nuclear uh, file in the current memorandum. Uh, okay, I'm not very worried about the nuclear stuff. Strait of Hormuz, neither transfer nor U.S. role. Iran makes no commitment regarding the transfer of management of the Strait of Hormuz. The future administration of the strait will be resolved as a regional matter through dialogue and joint decisions between Iran and Oman. I can't understand what Trump means there. Maybe he's saying that's not true or something. Um, Iran, I can't see Trump telling Iran and Oman they're going to run the Persian Gulf. Um, the main goal, the memorandum is to end the war on all regional fronts. The U.S. commits to. Okay, they're saying this is what Iran is saying. Okay. The U.S. commits to forcing Israel to end the war in Lebanon, and the phrase extension of the ceasefire does not appear anywhere in it. So Trump is saying, no, we never was saying we're extending the ceasefire to Lebanon. He's not pressuring Israel. He's just kind of interpreting in his words, in general terms, what happened. Release the blocked assets with a specific mechanism. Uh, Part of the blocked assets will be released immediately after signing, and the rest gradually during negotiations. Iran has received clear guarantees based on its desired mechanism. Yeah, war reparations, damages inflicted by the U.S. and Israel aggression are among the issues mentioned in the memorandum. The executive mechanism for receiving reparations will be agreed upon in the 60-day negotiations after signing. So Trump agreed to nothing about reparations. He said, talk about it. Talk about it means not a darn thing. Okay. Trump could say, we'll give you $1 a day for reparations. Uh, then he talks about lifting sanctions. He says that's something that goes in the final agreement. We talk about it for that. Uh, Trump is basically saying a lot of these things can be talked about in the final broadcast, and that's about it. Eh, Trump basically blew smoke at everybody Friday, and then Friday night when all the markets were closed, he said, "No, we don't got a deal." So it looks to me like he might have let Iran run loose with this, and it would probably result in the oil prices being seriously reduced because people were thinking, "Oh, we got ourselves a ceasefire cooking up here, and how nice that is." And then, uh, after the markets, shut down, he shut down Iran's thing. Now, Trump is running around and saying all the top leaders in Iran, all of them are aware of this and they're getting ready to sign it. He can be, let me say things in his favor. He can be trying to get a coup going in Iran and overthrow the government by the Iranian people, or turmoil, or dissension, or more specifically, have some of the um, members of the IRGC that are hardline, you know, start thinking that their leaders are selling them out and turn and take them over, which would you need to say, well, that means we'll get worse leadership. No, it means they'll be fighting amongst themselves because the bosses aren't going to just say, well, you don't want us here. That's okay. We'll call Putin up and go to Russia. No, that's not going to happen. So they're going to be, fighting. And that's what I giving Trump credit where possibly credit is due. He might be seriously trying to do this. He's lying, and I don't think you get anywhere with lying, but that's what he's doing. And is it working? We don't see any signs of it whatsoever. So the leaders of Iran got sick and tired of him, so they released statements. Oh, we're getting ready, we're going to have a deal, and this is what the deal is. And it got people infuriated. I looked at it last night and I put it on Telegram. I thought it was really going down. And then because Trump didn't say anything for a while, and then he came out after the markets closed and said, well, this and that. Look, the big the New York Stock Exchange closes at 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. Okay. That's your biggie. Okay. And the futures, and they're going to close. Chicago Board of Trade probably closes an hour or two later, and then the American Exchange, which is in San Francisco, 3 hours later, and the New York Bond Exchange closes the same time as New York Stock Exchange. So when you talk about New York futures, New York Stock Exchange, the New York Bond Exchange, and then adding an hour in for time difference to Chicago Board of Trade, the commodities, you got the big markets. Okay. So he managed to keep the prices, from soaring up. But what what happens when you do this is you increase the tensions between the two. So Iran is fighting Trump back on this fiction war with the media about a ceasefire. Trump is saying all is well, I got us a good deal. And Iran is saying all is well, Trump surrendered, we got a good deal. And they're fighting like two little girls, okay? And that's what's going on. And it's rather silly. And I don't see many signs of Trump saying, okay, I'm going to go to town on them. I expect wholeheartedly if Trump goes to town on Iran, because he was dumb enough, and I use that word carefully, dumb enough, and I'm sure Netanyahu told him a ceasefire is a waste of time with Iran. Okay. And worse than that, it gave Iran time and opportunity to refortify, rebuild, reconstruct their missile launchers and their missile cities so they could sustain a longer, more aggressive fight. So Trump and Israel both managed to drop a lot of bombs on their missile cities. They've got a good 40 of them, maybe 50, but I don't know the exact count. It's pretty high. They built them inside mountains and deep underground and stuff. You're not going to get to them with 250, 500-pound bombs unless you keep pouring them down. Like Israel said, you need 250 to 300. They tried it on one of these places to disable it. You're basically excavating a mountain with bombs. Even America and Israel have a lot of trouble with those numbers. Remember, what you're looking at is conservatively times 40. So let's do the arithmetic, okay? So let's just say there's 40 missile cities, not 50. There could be 50, there could be 60 by now. They had enough time to maybe build more, but let's say 40, okay? And let's not say 300 bombs, let's say 250 bombs, okay? That's 10,000 bombs. Could America and Israel scratch up that kind of inventory? Yes. Would that leave them in a weakened position if other countries attacked? Yes. Are they likely to do it? No. So Trump came up with another plan, which is to use special forces. And I would say this, I would expect there's perhaps 3,000 special forces in the area, or they may have sent some of the special forces home to go to do other missions or train or whatever instead of keeping them here. And because they could get them back here in, 8 or 9 hours, or well, maybe easily within 16 to 24 hours, they could get it back here. So he's not that worried about that. Um, bringing in, thousands of other ground troops, that is a rougher. I don't know if they're still, I imagine a lot of them are still here. Okay, maybe he never sent them back. Maybe they're still here. I don't know. All right, so the idea is to bring in with the big Skiorski, I think they call it, the big helicopters with double rotors, the big long things, heavy equipment. So they would probably bring in not great big shovel backhoe things, the big shovel things. Those things, the bucket and the big one could be, 10 feet across and 3 or 4 feet wide, or 12 feet across, or 50. They're huge, and you can't bring that with a helicopter or anything like that. But they can bring a reasonably sized piece of equipment. You know, how long would it take to get the special forces to learn how to use it? I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days. I mean, they're not going to be experts, and they're only learning how to use it in one particular situation. And they're not really worried about them, making a mistake and breaking another building. They don't care what building. So they just have to teach them the basics. Um, and they could use bulldozers, the shovel. They could have drills, not like, you hold, with a drill bit's like, 10, 12 inches thick or more. And it's designed to burrow through mountains and stuff. So it might, have a thing, 40, 50 feet or so. I don't know. Like for mining, drilling into the walls of a mine or something. So they could have those there, and also detonation, you know if they want to get in, they could, instead of detonating where they put all the reinforcements, heavy concrete, steel, and stuff, they could go, 6 inches away from that mark where their concrete and steel stops. They could go 6 feet, 6 inches, or a foot away, open up holes several feet deep and start filling it, stick 300 pounds of high explosives in there, right inside, and a boom, and see what happens. What they want to do, all they have to do, is stop the operation of the doors that open up to let the missiles fire out. I'll explain a little deeper. When the missile doors are closed, we'll call them the missile doors. The missile launchers, the missiles, and the crew and all their equipment and everything else is safe, let's say, right? Relatively safe. But they can't shoot a missile. So what they have to do is they have to open up the the door for it to go out. Now, do they have these like on a submarine with vertical launchers? I doubt it, guys. It could be, but I think it's more like this from what I read. A door opens this way, here's, and they shoot the missile out, or the door slides and it opens, or the door goes like this, or it goes like this. That's the only options, okay? Probably what happens is the door goes like this. Maybe it slides, okay? If it slides, it's going to be very easy to disable it because it's on a track. And let's say the track is sturdy, like a railroad track for a high speed train or something like that. And let's say they made the iron even an inch thick. A 500-pound bomb is going to stop it, especially a few. It's going to bend, it's going to break it, it's going to destroy it, it's going to move it, all of the above. And when they try to slide that door back, it's not going to be able to slide because it needs a straight and true track to go back, right? So their best option is a lift like this. Okay. So maybe they got, if you have a hydraulic inside that pushes it up with a shaft, like something like the lift in a garage where you put your car on it and it goes up in the air, something like that pole that pushes the lift up, something like that. It's not going to uh, it's going to get destroyed. I mean, when it's open, they wouldn't do. It's going to obstruct the missile going out. It's not easy to do it that way. I mean, maybe they could, but it's probably something exterior. But they could have hydraulic driven steel poles that push the door up. I don't know how they do it. Maybe towards the rear, and then the opening still works, but I don't know. Okay, but that would be harder to disable. The same with if you're going to lift the door this way or lift the door this way. Um, this is probably what it is. So there probably is an apparatus outside that pulls the door up, and the door would be on hinges. So all you got to do is bomb that door enough to break the hinges, throw it off track, uh, move it so that the lift doesn't work, break parts. Okay. So understand that that door is always vulnerable. They can't put 6 feet of concrete and 40 feet of dirt on top of that door because how do you open it? They've got like a conveyor line over there where they have a conveyor belt and the missiles are on it and it goes, the door opens, they get ready, they fire a missile, then it progresses like, with a robotic construction line, let's say, and it goes to the next position. There's another missile there. It raises up. They get it ready, and then where's the missile going? Set coordinates and stuff like that, and then they launch that. So they're going like a machine gun. So if they're going to keep the door open, they got a problem because bombs would come in. America or Israel would send 8 or 10 jets to drop, 15 or 20 bombs. All we need is one to get inside, and one 500-pounder is going to kill the people and damage the equipment and cause probably fires. And it's going to be a rather serious rebuild because you're probably going to get secondary explosions from the missile inside, and there probably wouldn't be anything left to rebuild. It'd be easier to start from scratch. So that's the vulnerability, but the bombing is doing it the hard way. If you got boots on the ground, all you got to do is keep, I don't know what, 8, 10, 12, 20, pick your number, jets in the sky at all times while the special forces are there on the ground. So first, the helicopters, the Apaches, and the helicopters go around. They got recon, they got drones. They know where all the anti-missile systems are, but they can't knock all the anti-missile systems in the country out because they're in these missile cities, and they got mobile missile launchers that are hiding in mountains, and then they bring them out and they fire and they go back in the mountain. So it's a difficult thing to get it, but the Americans and Israelis did get a lot of them, but there's still a lot left. And they said they rehabilitated the ones that got damaged. So they can take missiles, and they don't need long range ballistic missiles. They could take missiles probably easily with a range of 80 miles or maybe 150 miles, and from different locations in Iran, and fire them at their own missile city, which isn't going to hurt them while the American forces are there. You understand? Okay. So America has to blind the Iranians. Okay. How do you blind the Iranians? Well, you blow their radar up by the coast, which is going on now. They've done that in the last 10 days. America's done a pretty effective job of that. So radar is not something. you're going to fix overnight. When you blow the radar up, you basically, I would say, have to start over. Depending how you blow it up, maybe you could do a rebuild, but it's not easy. So they'd have to get more from China, and then if you blow the airports up and you blow the ports up, how the heck is China going to get them over there? All the games, right? And that's how they're going to do it. They're going to excavate. They'll have excavators, and they'll just excavate where the missile sites are and destroy it. Now they they can also stop the door from opening. How? Yeah, I knew you'd ask that. If the door is going to open this way or this way or this way, you can put uh, a massive amount of weight on it that it won't open. I don't know how much extra weight you would need, but let's assume the door that they're using, they're not making it out of wood. They're not making it out of cardboard. They have to make it out of concrete, which I doubt. Probably steel, maybe steel and concrete. I don't know. Um, but if they go ahead and build some massive thing that had 12 feet of concrete and 2 inches of steel underneath it, uh how are they gonna get it to come up? What kind of motor are they gonna use? See what I'm saying? But even if they did that, it just put more weight on it. How? Well, you have bulldozers. You just start shoveling, build a wall and go up 15 feet. So you don't have to open up the tunnel, the missile city. You just got to bury it so the doors don't open. Now, what about entrance and exit doors? Well, if Trump did it right, you bury those too, so they can't get out. Are they going to be able to get oxygen? Maybe. Depends what you want to attack. Uh, the way these things work is they have a diesel generator inside that makes electricity. A diesel generator, as you know, if you've ever seen them work, makes a big stink. It has toxic fumes, right? Okay. So if you have your garage door closed and you put a electrical generator, a little small one the size of a small suitcase, in your house to make electricity if the power went out and you shut the garage door and you're in there breathing the toxicity, you're not going to do very good. If you open up the garage door, it's going to be a whole lot better, but it's still going to be horrible. Okay. So these generators need to have an exhaust, a pipe, like with a car. Okay. So the gases will go from the generator into an exhaust pipe that will take it to the outside. So they got to expel the gas outside their underground facility called the Missile City. Got to get it expelled outside. Well, if you put dirt all around that, well, then it wouldn't be able to expel the gases. The thing would back up and it may stall the motor. Likely the motor would stall. You wouldn't be able to get the motor running again. That's the end of your electricity. No electricity, the missile city has failed. That's another way to do it. The missile city is maybe tied into the grid and diesel generators as backup, but that would be the intelligent way to do it. Okay. So they don't have to use the diesel generators unless the grid goes down, then they use them. Okay. Um, the other problem is the exhaust gases has nothing to do with the grid. Well, if it's running, you got to get the gases out. So, what about air to breathe? Well, they have another thing in there. They probably have a big fan, and I'm talking probably 6, 8, 10 foot fan that goes at a pretty good rate of speed, like a house fan, but a huge one, right? And it is got a duct and it's sitting there creating a draw or a vacuum. It's pulling air down and it has this duct that goes out to the surface. So it's pulling air from the surface and bringing it into the missile city. Okay. And if that gets covered up, they got no air. So you got to understand why I'm telling you all this. There's a lot of vulnerabilities to it, but it's not lending itself to working that good with the bombing. Okay. That's why Trump wants to do the special forces. So, can the Iranians fortify the place to withstand bombs? Yes, but not so great. In the last go round, the doors to the missile city got damaged a lot. Okay. But they have multiple doors to go in and out. Okay. And they might have secret passageway where they dig a tunnel, at 300 yards, and they disguise the opening, by putting, uh, like a mat that looks like grass and stuff over it. And so if they need to get out of there, they run down the tunnel and then they open that up and they get away. Um, but all you want to do is stop the functioning of the missile city. So there's a lot of ways it can be done. Okay. The people on the ground, the big problem Trump has is Iran will shoot missiles at them, artillery at them, mortars at them. Okay. And send soldiers in tanks and mobile artillery to go get them. How will they know? Well, the people in the missile cities probably have some cameras out there or some vision capability, or they got watch people out there, so they'll watch to see the soldiers coming, and then they'll start screaming to their headquarters, and then they'll try to do something about it. Now, a small amount of jets in the air is going to be highly effective. Any troop movement on it will get bombed. But now we're taking Trump to a different level. Now we're not blowing up real estate, which I think Netanyahu poisoned his mind about. It doesn't work. I mean, look how bad Israel does with that. Hamas is still 20 something thousand holed up in Gaza. It's a stupid way to go. Okay. What Trump would have to do then is actually kill Iranian soldiers, which would run up into the thousands. And oh, poor Donald. Oh, your Nobel Peace Prize goes up in smoke. Oh, Donald, what are you going to do? You're going to kill yourself? What are you going to do? See? He's got a lot of ulterior motives that are very, very bad. You have to blow them up. When they're coming to kill your special forces, you got to bomb them, and they'll stop. And then the special forces have to work, I don't know how many hours, and then you just airlift them with a helicopter. Now, what if Iran does what they were going to do before? Takes women, children, men, and puts them on the missile city to sit down on top of it, and then you can't bomb it. Well, you can't bomb it, but you could special forces it. Well, we've heard rumors they've been arming the populace, so they give the populace RPGs, AK-47s. Then what? Well, then the special forces have to tear gas them and get them out of there and drag them out of there. What if they put 3, 4, 500 on a missile city? See, Trump's not going to blow them up, but he might have to because they're armed. What if they're not armed? Well, now Trump has a problem. But using human shields is a war crime. But nobody's going to enforce a war crime against Iran because China and Russia will veto it at the UN Security Council, so they don't care. So you see, I mean, we could keep going with this. The complexities are overwhelming to Trump. Trump's largest mistake in this thing was to be stupid enough to think he can make a deal with Iran. Netanyahu was telling him it's going to be impossible, and it is. And the way the Iranians were talking, they wanted to go through the UN because they know once they get something like this ratified by the UN, it's never going to turn against them because they could break it, come up with an excuse, and Iran and Russia will not veto the ceasefire. So Trump would be in violation of the UN ceasefire if he then attacked um, Iran. And, Congress is not in the mood for America to start going against the whole United Nations. If Trump had his way, he'd probably drop out of NATO, drop out of the UN. You know, I think that's what he would do. And he would get rid of the Federal Reserve Bank. He'd go to a digital currency so he knows every transaction Americans make ever. Because there is no hard currency with digital currency. So all your transactions would have to be recorded. So he would block any payments of digital currency to any sort of a anonymous service. So you wouldn't be able to send uh, his digital currency to a bit chain, Bitcoin or something, where it would be anonymous. He wouldn't allow it. He just finds out where all these anonymous places are and blocks them. And if new ones pop up, or they might get away with it for a little while, but it blocks those. So the money would be worthless because the American Bitcoin, let's call it that, if they got it out into these other services, you wouldn't be able to redeem it or move it around again. So it would be worthless. So he would be able to do that. It's not difficult. And that's what they would like to do. And then he could still manufacture money out of thin air like he does with the Federal Reserve. But the United States wouldn't be paying interest to the Federal Reserve Bank. And the way you do that is you call it a Ponzi scheme. And, like he says, crooked Hillary and, stuff like that, makes fun of Biden. Well, he'd start making fun of the Federal Reserve Bank, which you notice he's not doing, and get rid of them, calling it a Ponzi scheme, prosecute them or something like that. And then the America has no past debt. You just get rid of it. You got to negotiate with people holding American debt instruments. And he could do that. And then you create a new currency. So you pay the people off in the new currency and you back it with gold. Remember the Fort Knox debacle with him and Elon Musk, and how they never told us what happened in Fort Knox. Are we dumb enough to believe that Trump never did an audit of Fort Knox? For some reason, whatever the audit said, he doesn't want to tell people, right? Unless there is a deep state in America and they told Trump, you're going too far. You're not going into Fort Knox. Just shut up and go away with this. Is that possible? It is, but I'm not thinking it could be. I don't think so, but it's, a lot of things could be possible. I'm not sitting there thinking that's really what happened. That's not, in my book, what happened. I think he knew something about what's going on in Fort Knox, and he just didn't go around telling anybody about it. That's troubling, but it's also inconclusive because we don't know what happened and what didn't happen. You know, we don't know. So, can you get rid of the missile cities? Yes, there's a lot of ways they can get rid of the missile cities. Are they going to? I don't know. It's going to take days to do it, um, maybe weeks. And the Iranians are going to be launching all sorts of missiles in the interim period while they're being destroyed. And the missiles are going to be going at the special forces troops, but not just that. Okay, they're going to send these missiles at the oil fields and the oil refineries of Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, probably Oman. Jordan doesn't export oil, and Saudi Arabia, and they're going to wreck the oil market. And then you will truly see the prices go to at least $200 or $300 a barrel, and it will cause a significant but recoverable economic problem. The nations will have to just water down their money supply and subsidize the price of oil. So it will hurt the economies of the world. There's no doubt about it. Okay. And recovery will be a problem. It'll take time, months, 6 months, a year. It'll be a rough thing, guys. But it's not going to be a complete outage of the world. It's going to be about, 20 to 25%. So it could be a fourth of the oil. And that's just going to mean higher prices. Everything you buy, all your food, everything is going to go up in price. Inflation's going to be runaway. You're going to see a problem in the world economies that has not been seen in hundreds of years. Would this be worse for America than the Great Depression? Yeah, because it's worldwide. It'd be far worse. Okay. Um, will it cause civil unrest and distress? Yes. Yes. Will it cause a lot of crime? Yes. All kinds of trouble. What people are doing now in the gas stations, I don't know exactly how it works, but you go to the gas station and you fill your car up. Let's say you put 15 gallons in at $5. If I don't know what the gas is, then probably five. So you spent $75, but they do something that it doesn't turn off your, you put your credit card in and then you ran $15, 15 gallons, and then it shuts off, but all it really does is stop the wheels from moving in the pump. Oh, they put a screw. There's a pressure plate where you hang the hose up that shuts it off. They put a screw in there so it doesn't shut it off. It just pauses it, I believe, so the gas doesn't keep pouring out. The person goes away thinking they finished their transaction. Then the bad guy moves in with his car and fills up his car for $7,500 on your credit card. And then the one after that, and the one maybe they fill 10-gallon canisters up. I don't know what they do. It's another scam. Will it be overcome? Somehow they'll probably fix it. If you go inside and you tell them, here's my credit card, I'm going to put, 20 gallons in or something like that, and they control it that way, well, then you can't get frauded because when you finish, you go back in and they end the transaction and you they cancel it inside and where the cash register is, and you can't get frauded. But if you're doing it all out in the street, yeah, they can fraud you. Now, how much is your credit card going to take? Well, if the credit card companies are adjusting to it, they might cancel transactions that go over $125 in gas or 150 or something. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah. I was talking about America, but so anyway, that's a new scam, and it's a harassment. Eventually they'll overcome it. It's going to be difficult, maybe, because they might have to modify all the handles that you squeeze to get the pump out, or the place where you put the handle in. They may have to modify that. There's going to be a big job if you got to modify, 900,000 hoses. It's a massive amount of work. So I don't know how they'll fix it, but they'll fix it. Uh, The easiest way to fix it is probably to do a program on the credit card thing, and you tell it before it starts pumping how many gallons you want or how many dollars you want to spend. That would be the quickest and easiest thing. So you might want to say, okay, you put a limit in of $90, right? So you can pump gas all the way up to $89.99 or $90, and then it doesn't go any further. Okay. So, but you got to be careful, because if you only put $70 in, there's $20 left over that the other guy can do. So you'd have to close the transaction out better somehow. So you would just have to hit some kind of button and say, terminate the transaction here. So your credit card is off the system, and the gas somehow would stop moving because the credit card went bad, I guess, or got turned off. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but when you think about it, the best thing for them to do is work it with the software with the credit card, because trying to change a million gas pumps is going to it'll take them a year, and that's going to be a lot of fraud. I imagine people will be siphoning gas big time, especially if gas keeps increasing in value. Um, all you got to do is find the gas a car somewhere and open up their tank and put your hose in, and you get it going with a pump and suck the gas out and put it in your car. It's going to take a little bit of time, but if you have a pump and you go aggressively, not that much time. And I don't think, the little hinge that they used on the gas tank flap. I think if you put a small crowbar in there, it would pop right off. Now, people have locking gas caps, which would be perhaps a little bit harder. What they probably have to do is put some sort of a gripping tool on that, like a king size vice grip, for instance, and with force twist it and force it off. Um, that would mean that people would have to they'd have to make a special tool, and people would have to buy it, and they would make, yeah, that's probably not going to happen, because people are going to not want to go out and buy these tools to do it. They'll use what they have. Um, and the police will be looking for this. So you probably will wind up getting a serious uh, jail term if they catch you doing it, more so than what you're going to get. So you're trying to get $75, $100 worth of gas, which has a dollar value of, say, $100, okay? And then you're going to go to jail, uh, probably get a year in jail or something like that. It's not really a good deal. Um, the other thing they could do with it is Well, they'll find a way to control it with the credit cards. That's the only real answer to it because it's cheap. It's just programming, and they could do that. Uh, they could make it so you could only get so much gas out of there at a time. So it might be that every $25 you're going to run the credit card through again, or every $40 or something like that, or 50. So they could fix it somehow. They'll do something. I don't know what they'll do. You might be able to control it and say, push a button. I want $5, $10, $25, $50, 75, 100, and that's the most, and that kind of thing. So you might get, if you put 100 in and you pump $79, you might be exposed for $21. But if you have a way to terminate, push another button, end transaction, it cancels, it closes out your credit card. Your credit card's no longer being charged. So if your credit card's not being charged, I imagine the pump wouldn't work. But maybe not. I don't know. They'll find a way. Okay. The other way they could do it is have a guy running around or around all the pumps watching for this. That's all they got to do too. So they might have to hire people. When I was driving as a teenager and when I was a kid, you didn't pump your own gas. That started. When did that start? Around 1980, I think, something like that. Late 70s. It used to be you didn't pump your own gas. You'd pull up. Now in New York, some of the stations were sloppy. In the 50s and 60s, they weren't really sloppy. But what they used to do is you would pull in, and the guy would say, "Can I help you?" And you say, "Yeah." Fill it up with regular, or fill it up with the premium. Okay. The guy would go, "Yes, sir." And then he would normally wash your window. So he had a squirter. He squirted a soap and water on your windshield, and he had a squeegee, and he would do a decent job of cleaning your windshield. If you asked him to get the back windshield, he would do it. Okay. Then he would say, "Would you like me to check your oil?" A lot of people say no. A lot of people say yes. They used to run a scam on people. You'd say yes, and he'd go and he would mess with the dipstick, and he'd say, "Oh, you're down a quart. You want to see it?" He'd rig the dipstick. He'd rub it so it showed it wasn't as much oil as there was, and people would say yeah. And then what he had set up is he had an empty oil can with the spout in it, and he would take the empty oil can and put it inside there and leave it for a few minutes while he did your windows or put air in your tires or something like that. Then he'd take it out, check the dipstick, and show you, "Hey, it's full." So he charged you for a can of oil you never got. That went on. And they would check your tires too. And then people would usually tip the guy a quarter or something like that, right? I mean, if he did everything, like you were going to take a trip and you wanted your oil checked, maybe you wanted your water checked, which could be tricky if the motor's hot, real tricky. Um, and you wanted your windows clean and you wanted to tank up, people give him a quarter. If people just went there and got gas and he washed the window, they usually didn't give him anything. Then you give the guy the money, he'd make change and pay you or give him a credit card or whatever, and that was it. You drove away. So you didn't have to go out and have your hands smelling of gasoline from the pump. The way to do it is keep a roll of paper towels in your car and then take paper towels and hold the handle with the paper towels so your hand doesn't smell from gasoline. It's hard to wash it off. You could go to the bathroom in there and wash it off if they got a good soap, which often is not there. And that was the old days, and the guys that worked there had a uniform, They had a Shell uniform, with Phillips, Texaco and all that. And they would, you know, service your car. I mean, it was a whole different world, back then. If your engine was cold, like you started your car up and you went 3 or 4 or 5 blocks to the gas station, shut it off, you had cold radiator. And he could open up your radiator and look in there and he could tell if you needed water or antifreeze or whatever, right? They would also check your windshield washer fluid, but they would try to sell you fluid, or if you wanted, he'd just fill it up with water. Did the fluid they would sell you with the soap work better than the water? Yes, it did work better. That's what would go on. And they did this in the cold winter. They did it in the rain. Usually the guy had where the gas pumps were, there was a little bit of a sign, like a little roof over there where it would keep most of the rain and snow off you. And that's how things worked. Uh, And then in the cold weather, what they did in the warm weather, the gas station usually had 3 lifts in their garage inside that they would work on cars. Predominantly, they would be doing oil changes. Sometimes they would do lubrications, a lot of that, of the running gear down below. Um, and then sometimes they were doing repairs where they put the people's car on the lift and they had the doors to the garage open. So it was like a 3 walled shelter. So if they had the motor running with the car inside it, it didn't bother anything. They had all the gas, the fumes were not, it was so open, it would just go out. But in the cold weather, they couldn't do that because the guys would get numb. They couldn't work on the car. So they would put a tube on your exhaust pipe and then plug it into a hole they had in the door and they'd blow the fumes out into the street. But that was another era. And I remember the gas was 19 to 25 cents a gallon. And they were doing these services for you. Now, if you went into rural areas, um, they really gave you the whole treatment. They'd clean your mirrors, they really would work on it. Uh I think to get the gas station franchise, they wanted you to do that. When you were driving on the freeways and you pulled off, they had the same thing going on. They had the guy with the uniform pumping your gas for you, checking the tires and, cleaning the windows. And when you're running on the freeway, your radiator was way too hot. If they open it, stuff would shoot out. They weren't really doing. The only time they were messing with the cooling system is if the light came on and or the gauge showed you were overheating or something like that. But they didn't bother with it. They left it. So that's what went on. And, uh, so the garages had hoses. They would change the hose. They had batteries. They would change the battery. They did tune ups. They would work on carburetor. They weren't doing valve jobs normally. Some of them did. They did work. It was pretty good. They weren't bad. Things sure changed. Okay, so we just wait and watch what Trump's going to do. What else can we do? Iran is provoking him and provoking him and provoking him. And, he's going to be, eventually, he's going to pop his cork and come out swinging. Okay. He has done that, but he stops. He needs to probably attack Iran for another. I don't think he can do it in 2 weeks, maybe 2 to 4 weeks with Israel's help. And he's probably going to wind up minimally getting their infrastructure. What about the water desalinators? Okay, you got to understand this. Listen to me. Getting the water desalinators is going to hurt the Iran national water supply significantly. They're in a drought. But if you get their grid, their electrical grid, you're getting their water desalinators anyway. They probably have generators to keep the water desalinators running a while. But what's a while? A week, 10 days, something like that, probably. Maybe they beefed it up and they could run a month, but I don't know. I really don't know. If if the grid goes and the water desalinators go, they're going to have to fulfill prophecy and leave the country. Jeremiah 49, the last, starting in verse 34 to the end. That's it. So it says it refers to it as Elam, and Elam can include Iraq, and Iraq can include Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, because there was no Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and Oman in the Bible. They didn't exist, so it would be, uh, I would say, lumped in with Iraq. The reason for that is they had a lot of, over the many hundreds of years, there was problems with wars where they conquered this, then they lost it, and the other guy conquered it, and so forth. So it doesn't mandate that it has to be that way, but it could be that way, okay? But Elam is in Iran, southwestern Iran, so it's Iran. You can't destroy just part of Iran, or maybe you can, and that would fulfill the prophecy, but I don't think so. I don't think so. Could be, but I don't really think so. It's just one political entity now called Iran. Okay. So let's switch over to Bible. And what I did today is I took some significant Bible prophecy verses and I went into the old manuscripts that the translations come from, and I ran the translations, and I want to show you. I'm actually trying to delete what the news stories, so I got room here. All right, let me keep getting this deleted. It'll just be a few seconds. Okay, I got it. All right. So I want to start with a little bit of a carryover from yesterday and then pick it up. There are three Hebrew New Testaments in existence that are published and available openly, right? One is referred to as Salkinson and Ginsburg, which is what I'm going to show you today, the best of the three. The second one is Delitzsch. And I have that one, and I have Salkinson. Delitzsch is a churchianity figure, okay? In the late 1880s, what happened is Sweet, Swete, did his Septuagint, and to make things sort of compatible with the Septuagint, what um, the church world back then was doing was um, also making a new, allegedly, these were supposed to be highly accurate texts. They were making a New Testament also, but Delitzsch wanted to put it in Hebrew, so he did. Now, I'm going to show you what Delitzsch did with 1 John 3:2, and then we're going to go and I'm going to give you a good discourse on how they twist the translations. Okay? So, and how they twist the underlying works too. 1 John 3:2 from Delitzsch. See how great is the love of the Father. See how great is the love the Father has given to us, that we should be called the sons of God, and his sons we are. Therefore, the world does not know us because it did not know him. Well, now we'll do verse 2. My beloved, now we are sons to God, and it does not yet revealed, it is not yet revealed what we shall be, but we know that when he is revealed, we should be like him, for we shall see him just as he is. And everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself, just as he also is pure. Verse 4. So basically, it's not that bad. He's talking about when he is revealed, okay? Which is John 6, verse 40, which is found in Zechariah 12, verse 10. Verse 4 of 1 John 3 is everyone who sins commits. This is a translation from his Hebrew using secular translation sources, not religious books from denominations or Catholics or anything. Everyone who, in other words, the meanings of the word, I had AI look up in secular sources. Transgression against the Torah, and sin is transgression against the Torah. So he's saying everyone who sins commits a transgression against the Torah, and sin is transgression against the Torah. Now, would you ever see that in a regular English Bible? Well, let's find out. 1 John 3:4. We'll kick it in the King James. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. Well, it does seem to bring it out, doesn't it? Okay. See, it's done very subtly. It's not done massively. Okay, so back to Delitzsch on verse 4. Everyone who sins commits a transgression against the Torah, and sin is transgression against the Torah. So it's a lot clearer here in Delitzsch's Hebrew New Testament, verse 5. And you know that he was revealed to bear our sins. See, now they're saying he was revealed to bear our sins. So they're confusing you with this revealed as if it happened already, okay? And in him there is no sin. So now we'll go look up verse 5 and see what the King James said. 4, where'd 5 go? Here it is. And you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. See, manifested is a better choice of word than revealed. To be manifested is not the same thing as revealed, okay? So the King James did a better job than Delitzsch. Okay. Verse 6. Everyone who abides in him does not sin. Everyone who sins has not seen him, nor has he known him. See, what it's saying essentially is these people that are sinning don't fear God, okay? Because they don't know God. That's why they don't fear God. Verse 7, my children, let no man deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous, referencing Yeshua. So the practicing righteousness. Let's go to verse 7 in King James and see what it says. Little children, for no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. It's referencing Yeshua being righteous, but okay, well, God. So, the King James is not that bad all the time, but it gets bad at times, and that's the problem. Okay? And it messes you up and it throws you off course, and you wind up being more susceptible to Schofield than Darby and other problems. Okay? So, I want to go through some other things with you now, more or less as a teaching to help you see how they twist it and just unwind the whole thing for you. Okay, Revelation 17, verse 14. This is from Delitzsch. These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Okay, verse 15. And he said to me, those waters which you saw, upon which the prostitute, the whore, the prostitute sits, there are peoples, and they are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. So the water represents people. Okay? It was good about that. Verse 16. And the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the prostitute and will make her desolate and naked, and they will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Verse 17, Revelation 17:17. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose and to act with a single purpose and to give their authority to the beast until the word of God is fulfilled. Verse 18. And the woman whom you saw is the great city which holds sovereignty over the kings of the earth. That is America. Now, that city is Washington, D.C., where all the nations of the world have their embassies. Okay. Now, some people are going to say, well, maybe it's the UN in New York. I don't think so, because the president's not in New York, and the name of Washington, D.C. is District of Columbia, and the Columbia is that woman that's the Statue of Liberty that the Columbia Motion Pictures icon represents. She's a flat chested woman that may or may not be a woman. She's holding the light. Come to me on the light. She's on a pedestal up high. Come on. The District of Columbia is not in the United States. That's why it's a city. It's a city administered by the federal Congress, but it's not in the 50 states. So it's DC. It's not New York. Okay, so I just wanted to read you Delich because Delich has some clarity in this. Okay, but as we're going to continue, you'll see problems. All right. Now we're in Delich on Matthew 24:30. We're going to do a big dissect on this verse with a lot of translations. Matthew 24:30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear. The sign means a miracle, signs and wonders, miracle. Got it? It's not a stoplight. It's not a speed limit sign. Okay. It's like a miracle. Signs following, miracles following. Okay. Signs and wonders. Okay. The sign causes the wonders. The people wonder how did that happen. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Now, does that sound like he's on earth? No. And all the clans of the earth, there it is. This is gold star replacement theology. First of all, clans should be families. Mishpucha is the Hebrew family, but they want to call it a clan. I could kind of look away and say it's a clan. I mean, that's not so bad. Of the earth, that's very bad. What this is it's referencing Zechariah 12, verse 10. I'll read it to you. I'll read it to you in the King James. I mean, it's what a lot of people are used to. So we'll go just do it in King James. Zechariah 12, I think it's 10. Let's see. No, it's 10 and 11. Okay, I'll read 10. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and of supplications. Those words are not so accurate. And they shall look upon me, who's the word made flesh, Yeshua, me, Yeshua, whom they have pierced. The spear in the side, the blood and the water came out. And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his. Now they add words in here. It says his only, and shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for firstborn. Well, it's obviously Yeshua. Next verse. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Had Ramon in the valley of Megiddo. And the land, now that's correct. Haaretz, the land, meaning Israel, shall mourn every family apart. The family of the house of David apart, and their wives apart. The family of the house of Natan apart, and okay. So that's your mourning, okay? Um, so we'll do Delich, Matthew 24:30 again, and then we're going to do others. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the clans of the earth will mourn. It's not all over the world. They're trying to make this appear to be Yeshua returning to New Jerusalem as the king. And that's down the road. It's not this event. They're confusing you and they're playing Schofield Darby on you. This is not an accurate translation. They took the word Eretz, Ha means the Eretz, Ha Eretz, the land, and it can at times mean the earth. It can be interpreted that way, but that's not this. So they took liberty and twisted it. Did they know what they were doing? You bet. They sure did. Will mourn. It says the clans of the earth will mourn. Well, they're making it sound like everybody's now accepting Yeshua. And what are they talking about? They're so out of sequence and they eliminate so many things. And they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Well, we know what that means, but they're messing around with it in this, making you think the coming on the clouds, they're making you think he's returning to to Jerusalem with New Jerusalem. Now let's look at other versions. Salkinson, there's the third Hebrew Bible that's written so somebody probably in the 10th grade can understand it. I have one in the house somewhere. It's like reading the Living Bible. If you're not a highly educated person and you speak Hebrew and you can't really get through the Hebrew Bible, it's too hard for you, you might want to use this, but it's very, very inaccurate. And I don't advise it for anybody. And I don't even know if it's the Word of God. I wouldn't use it at all. It's like using the Living Bible. I wouldn't bother with it. I certainly wouldn't want to teach out of it. Okay. Salkinson, 24:30, the other Hebrew. There's three. There's Delitzsch, there's Salkinson's and Ginsburg, and there's that other one that we're going to ignore. Okay. Um, then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the families of the land will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great majesty. Okay. They're making you think he's coming to New Jerusalem, and this is the beginning of the millennium. There's never going to be Israel rising as a head of the nations. All this stuff. Zechariah 12 is never going to happen. Where are the two witnesses? They're not there. This is what they're doing. But did he get it right? He did. He said the families of the land. That's very, very accurate. See, sometimes they get it right. Let's go to the next, not verse, the next piece of work, King James. This is the regular King James you're used to. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth, there we go, twisting, mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. It says in Zechariah 12:10, they look upon the one whom they have pierced, and then verse 11 is the mourning. It's obviously verse 11 is what this is talking about, but they don't want to acknowledge Zechariah 12 exists. Of course it does. They don't say it doesn't exist. They just don't want you to understand it or know about it. Now let's get cute and do the 1611 King James. Okay. Um, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man. The Son is spelled SONNE, this kind of thing. Son of Man in heaven, HEAUEN, Haywin, I don't know how you pronounce it. And then shall all the tribes of the earth. There it is again, replacement theology. That's replacement theology, replacing Israel with the world. That's right. Mourn, MOURNE. That's cute. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a direct translation from the Westcott and Hort Greek New Testament. Now, this is what the scholars use, and this is basically a redo of Codex Sinaiticus. That's what it was basically based on. But why did they not just use Codex Sinaiticus? Because they wanted to put their little twist in it. Okay. But let's read it and see. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. So it's not making it sound like Yeshua's in heaven. It's making it sound like there's a sign in heaven. Well, see, it's not, it's throwing you off already. And then all the tribes of the earth, there we go again, will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So they're making it project up forward to the millennium. Okay, now let's read the Codex Sinaiticus translation. This is what Westcott and Hort said their source would be. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So Sinaiticus used the word earth. Okay, now, as I've told you consistently for years, if you don't know end times prophecy, you can't translate the Bible. You'll get it wrong. This is wrong. Did Sinaiticus do this on purpose? I don't know. Probably, but I don't know. It probably didn't sound right to them. Who wrote Sinaiticus? The Jews? No. Christians back then, not Catholics. The Catholic Church wasn't an issue back then. Okay. Am I wrong? And perhaps this means all the Israelites in the earth, when they see him, they're going to get everlasting life. But does it mean all of them are going to mourn? No, I don't read of them mourning. They get changed. They want to come to Israel. Could it mean that it's only the Israelites in Israel that get the everlasting life? It could, but I don't see it. I've thought it out many times. Maybe that's why it's so hard for people to get into Israel, but even Jews. But let Zion come to mind. Why would they, if they weren't changed when he appeared, why would they want to come to Israel? Why would people send them out with gold and silver if they hadn't been changed? See, it doesn't make sense. I think they all get changed. And I think all the true believers in Yeshua get changed along with them because they're in Israel. Okay, so I don't think the use of the word earth, the use of the word haaretz to mean earth is not real common. It happens, but it, I generally try to look for it to mean the land of Israel. See, when you go with the Zechariah 12:10 and so forth, it's happening here in the land of Judah and Jerusalem, the Israel we have today, so to speak. Right. All right. Not in the whole world. We have no matching scriptures that show this happening in the whole world, so I doubt it. But it's a possibility I look at. I try to consider all the possibilities. Now, let's do another teaching on Revelation 1:7, which is a related key prophetic verse. Um, Revelation 1:7 with, we'll do Salkinson. If my iPad stops spinning, we'll do Salkinson. Okay. Uh, Behold, he comes with the clouds. Who comes? Trump, Netanyahu, no, Yeshua. They made a song about this that starts out, Hine Yeshua Hamelech Israel. See, that's false doctrine. What they're telling you is this: the Messianic congregations have been singing this for, I don't know, 40 years, 30 years. Hine, here comes Yeshua Hamelech, the King of Israel. That's the end. That's the beginning of the millennium when he comes to New Jerusalem, not Zechariah 12:10. See, they mess you, they get you all the time, you know. And I think the guy that did that song about the two witnesses which is also twisted incorrectly, did this one. I don't remember the goof's name. They got so many of these goofy singers. I don't bother with them. Listen, the churches let you in to sing your songs and take an offering. You're one of them. You're one of the church. You're not the real thing. They wouldn't let you in. Okay, behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, also those who pierced him, and all the families of the land. Well, how about that? Salkinson got it right again. All the families of the land shall wail because of him. Wail is they make these noises when they mourn, like, oh, okay. They don't do it too much now. The Arabs do it, but they used to do it apparently. Okay. Wail, you could say it's mourning. Okay, wail because of him. Even so, amen. Okay. Now, let's move on and see how Delich does this. He of Revelation 1:7. Here is the direct. Oh, okay. Behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and those who pierced him, and all the families of the earth. The era continues, shall mourn because of him. So shall it be. Amen. The same era. Westcott and Hort translation translated from the Greek. That's one of their primary underlying documents they write the New Testament from. Behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye will see him, and those who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth, there it is again, the error, will mourn over him. Yes, amen. Codex iPad spinneth. Wait a second, I gotta get a handle on my iPad. It's problems, of course. All right. The Codex Sinaiticus, behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye will see him, and those who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth. There it is, replacement theology, throwing you out of time sync with end times events. 1611 King James. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth. There it is, replacement theology. All kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. King James regular version. Behold, he cometh with clouds, every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all the kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. There it is again. Same error. Let's take it back to Wycliffe in the year 1395. Well, you might want to pronounce it Wycliffe, Wycliffe. Pick your cliff. I don't care. Okay. Lo, he cometh with clouds, and each eye shall see him. So instead of saying every eye, it says each eye. Fine. And they that pricked him. Well, now we're changing pierced to pricked. Well, if I go to the doctor for a skin testing and prick my finger, that's a little bit different than taking a spear and shoving it into somebody's side. So what's up with that? I'm not happy with that translation. Pricked him. And all the kindreds of the earth, there it is again, all the way back to 1395. So don't think Darby and Schofield were your original enemies. They're not. The Catholic Church obviously started the Reformation. The Reformation probably started on its own, and they said, "Oh, let's just take it over and support a reparation, a more modern church, rebellion from the Catholics. Let's just take it over and do it ourselves, and we'll fool them." And it worked. All the kindreds of the earth shall bewail themselves on him, bewail themselves on him, and making you think he's on earth, don't you? It's wrong. Okay. So this is back a long time they were doing poisoning the well. Long time. Tyndale, New Testament, 1526. So it's really about 130 years forward in time from Wycliffe. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and all eyes shall see him. That's better. They spell him, Hym, and they spell Se. And they also which pierced him, Pwersed. Okay, I can live with all the spelling like that. And all kindreds of the earth shall wail, even so in that. And they spell earth Erth. So could you read Tyndale? Yeah, you could read. I used to read the Tyndale New Testament that some guy put in modern English. It was pretty okay. But it's just the same as the King James. It's all twisted. If you read the NIV, you're going to get these same problems in there. If you read Revised Standard and you read this and the American Standard, you're going to still keep picking the same garbage up. Okay. We could read some of these. Let's do Revelation 1:7. Uh, in some of these translations, no problem. Let me. Where can I find that most of these translations? Where I have them. I gotta see where they went. Got it. All right. Let me tune in to. I gotta get the verse. How do you get the verse? Wait a minute. This is going to be more cumbersome. Let me go back to the other one. I don't want to spend the time on that. Um, let's go to Revelation 1:7. And let's put it into ASV. Behold, American Standard Version. Behold, it's Revelation 1:7. Behold, he cometh with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they that pierced him, and the tribes of the earth, there it is, shall mourn over him. Okay, the error is there. Let's see if we could grab another couple of these. Darby, that ought to be cute. Darby apparently did a translation, although I think it was probably just more of a copy. But behold, he cometh with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they which have pierced him, and all the tribes of the land. I'm shocked. He got it right. Darby actually got it right. All the tribes of the land shall wail because of him. Shocking. Why would Darby have done that? I don't know. Let's go to Matthew 24:30 and see what Darby had to say. Is Darby actually a good translation? Wouldn't that be a shocker? I can't believe it. Let's see. Let's give it a chance. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the land. Uh-oh, he got it right. What the heck? I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't I don't know what to say. You know, let's go to John 6:40. I'm happy, I'm not gonna cry. Maybe we got to find here. Look, I'm always open. Okay. Could this be? I mean, I don't know. I don't it's something I don't know. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes on him should have life eternal. That's an error. It's everlasting. It's not eternal. There's a big difference. And I will raise him up at the last day. He's throwing this into the millennium. That is wrong. And it's easy in Hebrew to not make that mistake. This this is not a good mistake. Let's do John 6:39. And this is the will of him that has sent me, that of all that he has given me, I should lose nothing, but should raise it up at the last day. Well, yeah. Um, what else can we check on that? Look at how he does 1 John 3:2. So we got a mistake here. That's a twist. So we got to be careful, these guys. Tons of people were unsubscribing because I'm exposing the false doctrines, and they don't like it because the King James to them is sacred. Yeah, but it's full of errors, guys. Beloved, now are we the children of God, and what we shall be has not yet been manifested. I don't like the use of manifested, but we'll go with it. We know that if it is manifested, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. That's really weak. That's too washed out. We don't know what he's trying to say. I don't like it. No. So if I go back to putting that in the King James, what it reads is, Beloved, now we are the sons of God, and doth not yet appear what and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. We know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. See, at least you understand what's going on here. When you read Darby, you don't know what the heck he's talking about. Like what? Let's stay with the Darby scripture and try it on uh JPS. They don't, that's Jewish publication. They don't have the New Testament. Uh what is this one? There's one called DRS. I don't know what that is. Let's read it. Dearly beloved, we are now the sons of God, and it yet appeared, doth not yet appeared what we shall be. We know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. You see, this whole thing, they make you think that it's Jerusalem, New Jerusalem, I should say, and that's when you go in there with Yeshua. This happens. They don't want anybody to know about Zechariah 12. That's what they're doing here. Okay. These Arab books were popping up hundreds of years, but these works like Westcott and Hort and that kind of stuff came, uh, Sweet Septuagint, which isn't so bad, came in the late 1800s. At that time, there were Jewish organizations, mostly in Europe, that were getting ready to start having people go to Israel, and they were going, some people, and so forth. But things didn't really heat up till 1917, the Balfour Declaration, when the British opened it up for the Jews to go there, and they kept it open for 5 years, and then they shut it off. So that's when it really got bad. So Satan was trying to twist the scriptures to put everything into his replacement theology, uh, and confuse the people in the Bibles. And churches have taken, you could either say they were deceived if you want to. I don't say that, but you could. If you want to say they were deceived, why would you follow them? The blind follow the blind, they both fall in a pit. Why would you want to follow them? You want to go to the pit? Or you could say they were intentionally deceiving you. And why would you sit under them under those conditions? So it's one of the two, because the deception is there. Let me read the chat and see what, if I got any questions to deal with or anything. What do I got here? New York is 666, as is Mother of Exiles. Washington Monument is 666. That's, I certainly don't see any scriptural basis whatsoever for that. It's the name of the beast, not a statue or something like that. But I'm glad you understand the evil in America. Okay, Global Health and Peace Initiative Treaty, SDG goals, vaccine certification. Well, I guess they're working on their vaccines like they always do. They won't stop till they're dead, I guess. Uh, Revelation 18:23. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in them, and the voice of the bridegroom shall, bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more. All in thee for thy merchants. Oh, okay, it's just quoting the scriptures. Those are good scriptures to quote, though. Pretty good accuracies. Okay, First Thessalonians 3:3-4. They shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with children. They shall not escape. Um, yeah, which is written in our DNA. Corruption, the people is follow after strange flesh. Yeah. Okay. Looks like I'm all right on this. So, um, see, they seem to know things about the Bible because they understood the Greek, not the Hebrew so much, the Greek, and they were able to remember the word Greek. appears in the scriptures. Watch this. This is good. I'll have AI find the verse. Find me the verse in the New Testament where the word Greek or Greeks appears. It might be more than one verse. I'm going to take a break for a second and we'll come in and go into this. Wait till what I show you, though. You're going to like this one. All right. every Sabbath, uh, he, meaning Paul, reasoned in the synagogues trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. As a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men. What I'm saying is that the Greeks could transfer into the church world because they're so high on the Greek manuscripts. But I'm not doing a great job of proving it. But it does seem to be something to it, maybe. Jews demand signs, and Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified. No, I don't think it's a good doctrine to build. I can't. I thought it was stronger than that, but no, it's not. Um, so we can't say that they started doing this in the 1800s because the Wycliffe and the Tyndale are also corrupted. So this takes us back to the Catholic Church. You see, the what they did to conceal the gospel, they took, I believe, the Greek New Testament and the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, and they translated it into Latin. Now, maybe they did that in such a way that they would know what it meant, but the world wouldn't know Latin, okay, when they did it. And then they used to preach the scriptures to the people in Latin. No, I think they would swing the altar thing and the incense in the church and go Sanctu Sanctu. I think that's Latin. I don't know. They're maybe it's Greek or I don't know what it is. Probably Latin. So they would preach the scriptures blind to the people, and then the people got some Bibles later on. I don't know what year, maybe 12, 1300, and they used to rent them to each other. I mean, it was pretty hard to get a book. I think you were talking post Gutenberg printing press. So they had the printing press. And they would, there was very precious to the people. We go back in time. Let's even go not that far back in time. Let's go to 1800. What was going on here in Israel? Almost nobody lived here in Israel. The Dome of the Rock with the gold was rotted off it. Pieces were missing, sections of the roof were gone. It was run down. There were very, very few Arabs living here, and there were very, very few Jews living here. Jerusalem had some sort of a population of different people, various like Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Catholic, and stuff would be there. I believe they had some rabbis and ultra Orthodox there. It wasn't much, you know. They at some point in the latter 1800s, I believe they built a train in there. Um, they didn't have a lot of fighting going on because there wasn't a lot of anybody. A lot of the Arabs were running hotels with food, for pilgrims. These were people that predominantly were following like Catholic or Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, kind of Catholic spin-off things. And they would go there and they would, around Easter, they would follow what they have a name for it, the different stages. They would map out a course that they say, emphasis on they say, the Romans had Yeshua take this course when they were nailing him on the stake. They call it the Stations of the Cross. That's what I believe it's called. And it's not this stuff. It's they would stop at all the places, and some of the lunatics would have a whip, and they would whip themselves on their back. Uh, I don't know the scripture for that because there is none. Maybe that's in the Satan Bible. I don't know. Um, and they would do that, but a lot of people would just want to go to all the different stations, and the Arabs would work as tour guides. Now the Jews wouldn't be entertaining them and showing them the stations of the cross for Yeshua because they were the ones that arranged for the Romans to kill Yeshua, and so they weren't, and they didn't believe in him, so they weren't promoting that. But there wasn't much going on here in the 17 and the 1600s. There was barely anything over there. I mean, it was just nothing really going on. Mark Twain went there in the 1800s, and there wasn't much. I mean, there's a book of lithographic prints that were done in 16 or 1700. I remember reading it in Jerusalem, and there wasn't anything going on there really. There wasn't much of anything really. No, not much of anything. Uh, and I guess if you went back in previous years, you would have got into the Crusades, and the Muslims and the Christians were fighting constantly to get Jerusalem. Some would have it for a long period of time, and then a battle, and they'd lose it, this kind of thing. And that stuff didn't start until the Catholic Church got, built up, and they started making believe, well, they wanted to control the land of Jerusalem, not Israel per se. Though they did do that, it was mostly Jerusalem they were interested in. Um, so even if we go 16, 1700, or early 1800s, there was nothing going on with the Jews. The Jews were Jews that were being persecuted around the world. A lot of them were collecting in the United States. They were able to be okay, and they were back in the 1700s in the United States, and a lot of them were backing the rebellion against Great Britain, which America won, and it was a safe haven for the Americans, and they never really got any major serious persecution. You know, the Ku Klux Klan didn't like them, but they tolerated them as long as they weren't proselytizing. They weren't trying to bring converts in and stuff like that. Um, did they let them build synagogues? I'm not sure. I guess they did. Um, in the big cities, there was no Ku Klux Klan running around. Um, the but My grandparents came from Russia and Poland to America around 1900-ish, a little after 1900, before World War One, and they thought it was the promised land. They weren't going to Israel. Israel wasn't in their agenda. Um, it would have been hard to go to Israel. I don't know if you could just go and get in and stay there. I don't know what the deal was back then, but there was no major when they had the pogroms in Russia, and they had no major desire to go to Israel. The desire was to go to America, and then went to America, and they were in hog heaven in America, so to speak. Well, like why? Well, they moved into apartments where they had heat. Um, they had radiators and they had free heat. They had running water in the house. They didn't have an outhouse. They had a toilet. You flushed it. They had a bathtub with a shower, right? They had sinks. Um, they were able to go. Did they have a refrigerator? They had in those days, people had ice boxes, as well as they did have electric refrigerators, but that was for the rich. There was a lot of people that had no electricity in it. Look, I knew people in the South. I saw people in the South in the 60s that had no electricity in their house. Okay. So, it was not so unheard of. So, what they did is it was an ice box, it was called. And in the bottom, you had a drawer, and the guy would come with the ice machine on the truck, and he'd have his piercing handle, and he'd get a big block of ice or two and bring it up to your house and put it in your refrigerator. And it would last you, I guess, depending on the heat in the house, it would probably last you 2 or 3 days. It wasn't dry ice, I don't think. It might have been dry ice. I don't remember. But they could have both kinds. And in the summer, you probably had to have it changed every day. But in the winter, you might have been able to go 2 or 3 days. I don't know. But maybe so they put it in and that kept your food cold. But they didn't have a freezer. And, the rich people had refrigerators that were powered by electricity, but not everybody did. The rich people had cars. They had electric cars, they had gasoline cars, they had water cars that ran on water. They had all kinds of cars, including electric. And so you would go to the various vendors in the stores. They didn't have super Walmart and stuff like that. So you'd have guys out there on the carts selling fruit and vegetables. You had a butcher shop. He had meat. Um, so you'd go buy your food like that. You didn't do one-stop shopping that much. Although when I remember in the Bronx in the 50s, there was one or two supermarkets that would try one-stop shopping, and they made it rather successful. They had a butcher department that had fruit and vegetables. So they did get into that idea, but not in the early days. So they would go there. But you see, when they were living in Russia, they didn't have all the fruit. They didn't have cherries, plums, pears, peaches, pineapple, bananas, apple. They didn't have access to fruit all the time. You had access to fruit pretty much all the time. In the My grandparents came to, and I had my great grandparents were there too. Some of them, and they were eating fruit all winter. You could have fruit over there, and you had all kinds of vegetables, and that didn't exist where they lived in. They were really happy to have that stuff, right? And they had, potatoes, you had oil, and you had all kinds of breads and rolls, and they pickles were very popular because it was cheap and easy. It basically took cucumbers and seasoned them in a barrel with different seasoning in the water or whatever they had in there, and they'd leave them in there for a long period of time, weeks, I guess, days and weeks, and they would take a flavor. And they had different flavor. They were delicious, and they were big. They were like this. You'd get pickles, and they were a nickel. You'd go to the pickle barrel, and you could tell them which one you wanted or eat. And the guy selling it would have 4 or 5 different barrels with different, you know, sourness and stuff. And you would take the pickle and you'd eat it. It was like a substantial piece of food. It was a nickel. I remember when I was a kid, back when my great grandparents came here, it was probably a penny. And that was popular. And then they had knishes. But potato was a staple for them because in Russia and Poland, near Russia, where she was from, they had the potatoes would keep in the winter. Potatoes in a cold house wouldn't go bad during the winter, and it gave you carbohydrates when you mixed it with oil. They had different oils, probably not olive oil, other kinds of oils. So they were making many different dishes out of potatoes. Meat was hard to come by, so they were not that tall. So the men would be normally 5'7", 5'8" would be pretty tall. You'd see a lot of 5'5", 5'6" with the men, and the women even less, because they weren't eating a lot of protein because they didn't have access to it. That was, if they ate meat, they ate chicken. Beef would be pretty rare. Milk they had, eggs they had, and chicken they had. Fish, they had some fish. Uh, but eating, beef would be pretty costly. Um, Dark, I don't know if they had dark. I don't know. Um, I know chicken was their favorite. They went for the chicken. Potato, they'd eat foods with potato and with chicken. They liked eating fruit and they ate vegetables. They liked cabbage. That was probably from the old country. Um, Beans, they'd eat string beans. Carrots, they like carrots. Uh, they didn't go into all they didn't eat rice much. That was rare. They didn't care for rice. Rice wasn't on the agenda. They made from potatoes. They made potato pancakes, which was a patty like this, about that thick. They used oil and they ground the potatoes up, or they would just take them on a grinder, this metal thing that had like teeth, and they would grind the potatoes and they'd make a patty, and they'd have a frying pan with oil in it, maybe that much oil, and they would heat the oil up and they would drop the patty in it and wait till it got lightly brown, flip it, get the other side. You could do a few of them if you had a big pan at the same time. And then they would stack them, and they dripped oil. Sometimes they might put them on a paper towel, or more likely a rag, and let the oil drip off, but I don't think they cared. Um, they didn't know the oil wasn't so great for you, and they would make these potato pancakes, and they were a mainstay. Then they also had a kugel, which was a large version of a potato pancake like that, pretty thick, and they had that also. They had a potato kugel, and then they had another kind of kugel called noodle. They took flat noodles that were about maybe 3/8 of an inch broad, and they were kind of substantial for noodles. and there was a brand Mueller's. They had these Jewish manufacturers that made it, and they would use the noodles with, um, I think, a mozzarella cheese, not a mozzarella, a ricotta cheese or cottage cheese with different seasoning, and they made the potato and the noodle kugel. Then they had blintzes, which is a phyllo dough with cheese inside, cottage cheese, or generally ricotta cheese with cinnamon and raisins. And they got dropped in the hot oil and cooked. That was another mainstay. There, they were getting protein from the cheese. Uh, they also had baked potato, and they would do French fries, not for themselves. They themselves never went after French fries. Their children, they did the French fries for. So they did the French fries, but not for themselves. They would go for mashed potatoes or baked potato, and they use sweet potato. They like the sweet potatoes too. Uh, then they had stuffed pepper. They would take a bell pepper and hollow it out and put stuff in there. Now, they used kosher in there, which is sort of a rice. Well, it's not rice. It's brownish. It's its own thing. They would put that in there. Soups, they were high on soups, really high on soups. Chicken soup, which had pieces of chicken in it. And they would season it, and it was a chicken broth, basically, and that's how they would eat their meat. Sometimes just have scraps of chicken meat in their soup. That was all they could afford in the old country. But in America, no, they would go out and eat um, the chicken. They would buy in chickens. And how did they eat the chicken? Well, they boiled the chicken a lot of times, which I thought was horrible. They'd eat boiled chicken. See, they had bad teeth. And the state of the art in teeth wasn't so great back then. Where you would be getting root canals when you grew up, they were getting an inlay, which wasn't as, it was good and it was bad. The dentist would drill out a hole in your tooth, a big hole, and he would make a mold, and then he would get gold, an inlay of gold, and then they would shove it. Gold was cheap then; it was like $35 an ounce, right? So then he would shove it up in there, and it would work, not as good as a crown, so it didn't work that great, but it worked, and some people kept it 50, 60 years. It was an art that I think the dentists no longer have. Um, and what was real common is they were doing extractions. The dentists would do extractions, and then they would give them artificial teeth that would clip on, dentures. Um, that would cover with it, and the dentists weren't that great, and it used to hurt them. And a lot of times, what they would do is I would see them take their dentures out, and they would soak them in a solution. I don't know if it was salt water or water, and they would just give their gums a rest. And that was, they didn't have, the technology that we have today. So they had bad teeth. Okay. When they were in Russia and Poland, they had no dentist. They didn't have a dentist. They didn't know what it was. So when they came to America, their teeth weren't so great to start with already, but that's what they did. So then they did go to the dentist if they had trouble with their tooth, and the dentist would fill cavities. They put the mercury in, and you could get gold if you didn't want the mercury. They'd fill with gold. And then they had inlays, which was much bigger than filling a cavity. And they lost teeth a lot, so they would get dentures. Um, and they didn't eat a lot of corn or apples because the dentures back then wouldn't really lend themselves to chewing the corn off a cob or eating hard apples and pears and stuff. But you could today with the crowns, you could do it, and the artificial teeth they implant. So they weren't tall. They didn't have that. And when I grew up, it was chicken. It was chicken with chicken with chicken. When I moved out of the house, when I finished college and everything, I think I went a number of years without eating chicken. I don't know if it was 3 years or 5 or 6 years. It was a long time. I was so sick of eating chicken all the time. I couldn't stand it. And then one day I said, I didn't have chicken. I'm going to go to Kentucky Fried and get a bucket. And I went home and I ate the bucket and I had a good time with it. And then I started eating chicken again. Today I eat chicken, no problem, but I had so much of it. Do they have steaks? They wouldn't eat steaks that much. Did I ever see them sit down and do a New York? No. Or a filet mignon? No. New York strip steak, maybe that, maybe, I don't know. Um, Ribeyes with the bone. No, that those cuts they didn't have. It was tough meat. They had bad teeth. They didn't eat it. Chicken was easy. They used to take the chicken legs. They'd buy the whole chicken without the head, usually. I used to see them do that. They would have the feathers burned off. They had a guy that had a machine that was like a grinding wheel and it had sparks or something. And he would hold it there and get the feathers off the dead chicken. And they cut the head off at the local butcher too. So he would just be getting delivered dead chickens, and then he had to defeather them and cut the head off. And they would, if you wanted it with the guts inside, they got the blood out of it. If you wanted the guts inside, they'd give it to you. I think they wrapped it in a butcher paper. Um, and they used to make the liver, chicken liver. That was a big thing. See, they were poor, and this is how they were living in Russia and Poland. They were. Um, Taking the liver from the chicken and cooking it and making a chicken liver, eating it itself or using it as a spread. They ate the pupik, the stomach. They ate some of the innards. They took the neck, the vertebrae thing, and they would cook that in water, usually boil it, and they would eat that. They used to like it. They used to feed it to me as a kid. I'd eat it. I didn't even care for it that much, but I'd eat it. The stomach, I had that. It was all right. I'd eat it. I didn't care about it. Um, what I wouldn't eat is they would take the chicken legs and put it in a pan with water and boil it pretty seriously. And then they would eat the chicken leg with the foot and the claws. And I don't know. I never got into that. I couldn't do that. You know, that I wouldn't do. Uh and salami and bologna they ate. That was a cheap meat because it was mixed with fat and stuff. So they eat that. They'd buy the salami, they'd cut it. Hebrew National was the big brand that they all bought. It was kosher. They'd eat the salami. Was it good? Yeah, it was great. It was a hard salami. And then if they couldn't eat the hard salami for their teeth, they had the bologna, which was soft. They did that. Hot dogs, they didn't care for. The kids ate hot dogs. They didn't eat hot dogs. They didn't like hot dogs. They never had it growing up, and they didn't bother with it. It was always chicken. And how did they make the chicken? Well, a lot of times it was boiled. Then they also very frequently put it in the oven and baked it in the oven. And they also would roast it later on when they had electric devices where you had a spit in the house and it would rotate and they had electrodes that were glowing and it would roast the chicken. That came later. I think they had those probably by World War II, maybe before World War II. Um, that was good. The roast chicken I enjoyed. The boiled chicken was horrible. The baked chicken was okay. But I had so much chicken. And what else did they feed? Did they eat? They ate a kind of beef called minute steaks. It was absolutely putrid. They were small, they were koshered, so they salted them, washed them, salted them, washed them. Hard, terrible, no taste, lousy, stinking minute steaks, cheap junk meat, horrible. I used to buy what they called club steak when I was on my own after moving out, which is one after I finished college. And it was, they used to be like $1 a pound or something like that. And they were a lot of fat and they had the bone. I used to like them. I'd put them in a pan and burn them and then turn it over and burn it. I used to like that. They never cooked those. To the really only steak I used to see was minute steak. Lamb chops used to be dirt cheap when I was a kid. They had a lot of lamb chops. They were okay. I used to eat them. They were okay. So did they have any meats that I really liked? Very few. What they used to make was tongue. They'd buy the cow tongue. See, this is from Russia, poor people. And they would put the tongue in a big pot and boil the daylights out of it and then slice it. It's a tough, grainy. I didn't care for it. I used to eat it, but they did that. Um, Cow liver we had. They made that. Uh, the other stuff from the cow we really would never eat. Um, they didn't have that going on. They had Cornish game hens, very unpopular. They had duck. Some people would have duck. They called it kachkala in Yiddish or kachki, I think. Kachkala was a baby one. Kachkala was a baby one. Kachki was a duck. They had that. Um, Seafood they ate, not common. They'd eat it. They had a whitefish they liked, and they would eat salmon. It wasn't too popular, the salmon, to be honest with you. Fish wasn't a big mainstay. There might have been some people that liked fish, but it was not popular. They had a thing called gefilte fish. I eat it in Israel sometimes. It's a nugget like this, like the size of a medium potato or something, but it has ground up pieces of fish, usually cod or something like that, and it has a kind of a bread thing in there with it, and they put pieces of carrot in there and whatever else they want to, and they put it in a sauce, and it's good, but it's high carbo. It has protein. It's high carbo and fat, and it's all right, but it's not a really good, healthy food. Jello, they like Jello. They made Jello. Of course, it was dirt cheap. Uh, None of them were that big on of coffee drinkers. The children, my parents' generation, were, but they were not big on coffee. They drank it, but not much. They weren't, they used it, but not too much. They weren't that great. They used to drink tea. They'd put a tea bag in and drink tea, usually Lipton or something like that. Ice cream they loved. They all ate ice cream. Did they didn't like the cones. They liked mostly on a stick or they would buy a container and just put it on a plate. They uh they loved the ice cream. They didn't have ice cream in Europe. Did they like drinking milk? Yeah, they liked drinking milk. They gave the kids chocolate milk. Did they like a lot of pastry and cookies and cake? Yes. Sponge cake was a popular one. It had honey in it and very good. Uh, Cookies, little cookies they made. Bread they liked. They didn't overindulge in bread, but they liked it. Sandwiches were not real popular with them. With the kids, they were. Like my parents would feed us peanut butter and jelly, cream cheese and jelly. The ones that were from the old country, they didn't eat that because they never had it growing up. Uh, they like watermelon. They used to eat a lot of watermelon, cantaloupe, and honeydew. They like that. That was probably good with their teeth because it was sweet and soft, cooling. Uh, in the winter, they loved their soup. They loved their tea. Uh, use of alcohol was rare. There were drunks in the neighborhood, but it was not common. People's fathers were alcoholics. I know it happened. The guys would the the parents' generation, my generation, our parents would.
I found it was escape place. It was due to vandalism. Somebody tore the gate out to let her out.
Which gate?
The front gate, the wooden things you had put in. Someone broke it off, broke it towards the street, and it's laying on the ground, and gave her space just to go right outside, right over the top of that.
Somebody did it, huh? Yeah. Okay. You got it repaired?
No, it broke off. They snapped it. They broke it in half. They broke it like a stick.
So she could get out anytime.
She can get out anytime.
We got to get it fixed.
I can't.
No, we got to get somebody to fix it.
Okay, well, the problem. We'll deal with it, but that's the problem.
Well, it's better to deal with him than to let this continue. All right, I'll talk to you. Yeah, I'll talk to you. All right. Somebody came and sabotaged her. They don't like Beulah because she barks, so they ripped some of the fence down, making it easy for her to get out. Life in Israel. The people in Israel, let me tell you, the 2/3 getting cut off. I live it. I know they're going to get cut off. So that was my crash course on what they used to eat. What they eat in Israel, the only people that eat like that now in Israel are basically the black coats, the ultra orthodox, and some of the Ashkenazi, the ones that come from um, Europe and America. Uh, they refer to us as Anglos and they discriminate against us heavily. They will eat like the food I was describing. Now, pastrami and corned beef did happen. They did make that too. That went on in America when I was a kid, and my grandparents made it for my parents. That went on. They'd buy a big piece of meat, they'd season it, and they'd stick it in the pot and cook the daylights out of it, slice it up. And they didn't make it as good as the delis. The delis in New York all seem to buy the corned beef and pastrami from the same outfit. It was delicious. I don't know why, but it was delicious, and it was boiled meat, and it came wrapped in plastic. It's probably about 5, 8 pound slab, and they put it in a special steamer they had that would keep it steamed, and they'd keep it until they used it up, which might be a couple of days. And then they had a new one probably in their freezer, and they put it in there, and it would thaw out in the steamer rather quickly, I suppose. And they would slice it off, and you could get it on a plate, or generally you put it in a sandwich. But the old people from the old country, that came from Russia and Poland, they didn't eat the sandwiches much. That wasn't their they didn't didn't do it. They weren't that interested in it. And most of them didn't eat out much. So my father's generation ate out. But when I was a kid, the parents of my mother and father and even great grandparents were alive, and I knew them. I used to see them all the time. They didn't go to the deli and eat there. No, it was my mother's generation or my generation that would do that. They wouldn't go there. So our neighborhood had one, two, three delicatessens, and they all tasted the same. I mean, it wasn't much difference. You just found a deli that You were one had better French fries than the others. They were thick, soft, and greasy, but the others were close. They weren't as good, you know. So you would go there. They had bakeries. I think we had one. I think there were three bakeries in the neighborhood too. Two pizza stores that were not kosher, but people would eat there anyway, and they would get pepperoni pizza and what did they put on? They put pepperoni. They put I think ham, and you could get. Yeah, was it? That was it. If you were going to have the guy make a pizza for takeout, he'd put. You could order extra cheese or something like that, and they had powdered Parmesan cheese you could dump on it. But did they put vegetables on it? I don't think so. Maybe I can't remember. Maybe they put onions on it or something. I don't remember. It wasn't popular. The popular was pepperoni, slices of pepperoni on the pizza. That was the mainstay. That's what people liked. That one, two, actually three Chinese restaurants in the neighborhood that were not kosher. The people would go to. They had a couple of restaurants that was simplex, like hamburger, bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich. Simple foods. That like diner food. They had some of that. They had a few bars in the neighborhood. The kids used to go in there. Some of the kids at 14 would go in there and order drinks because they were apparently paying the cops off. So they weren't worried about getting busted. Uh, the bars were usually busy. So there were people that would drink, but that doesn't mean they were alcoholics. They just went in there to have a couple of drinks, one or two, and leave. And they I don't think they would be sitting there all day but probably some did. Most of the men, my generation, the fathers of the kids like me, they would drink beer. They would watch a ball game and have a beer, or they'd watch TV and have a beer. Or they liked beer. They didn't drink hard liquor very much. It wasn't, at a wedding, a bar mitzvah, they would, but they didn't really go after that. My father drank cans of ale. Very rarely. My mother would buy 2 or 3 cans, and it'd last 6 months, or something like that. There's something about a warm spring day or a summer day, and you're watching a ball game, not for me, for a lot of people, and they're watching a ball game, and they have a can of beer with a soda, like pastrami or a corned beef sandwich, French fries, and a beer. They have a tray in front of their and the thing, and they would watch the baseball game, which was in color if they had a color TV, and they would sit there and do it. But a lot of people didn't bother with that. Uh, my thing was a bowl of cherries. My parents would give me a bowl of cherries, and I would sit by the fire escape and eat them while I was waiting for it to get you know further on in the evening when the kids would go out. In the summer, the kids would go out into the schoolyard and we'd all get together. 100, maybe 100 of us would be there. And, basically some kids would play basketball and mostly just talk, girls and boys, and we'd hang out there. And usually they started coming about 7:30, 8 o'clock. So I would be sitting there waiting and I would be eating a bowl of cherries looking out the window. I used to like that. So the alcohol use was not much at all. You know, it was pretty lightweight. Uh, on the holidays, they did wine. They bought Manischewitz wine, which was cheap, sweet garbage wine. If you like sweet, it tastes great. They have a grape flavor and a cherry. The cherry is superior, but it's all full of sugar. A bottle like that much have that much sugar in it or something. It's horrible. It's just so sweet. Ooh. It's terrible. Nothing like having a good white wine from, you know, uh, Sonoma County or France or something. That would be a nice tasty thing, and you cool it off, and it's refreshing. I never cared for red wine or anything. I never liked it. Uh, so that was, how they lived. Eating out was, something my parents got into. But the older ones, my grandparents they wouldn't go there. They didn't want to. I mean, they would eat out once every 3 years, maybe, or not at all. I don't know. I don't ever remember it going on. It would be looked upon as the woman's not doing her job. Why is she doing this? Why are they eating out? Why doesn't she just cook? And they were good cooks. I don't know if they were good cooks in Russia, but they learned to be good cooks in America. They knew how to cook. They knew how to cook. And they read the paper called The Forward in Yiddish. They spoke Yiddish mostly. They knew English, but they would revert to Yiddish when they were amongst themselves. And they all used to gather where the stores were. Well, in different areas of the neighborhood, they would gather. What was common, a lot of the people would buy a lawn chair and they would go down in the warm months and sit down in front of their apartment building on the sidewalk. The cops never cared. And, maybe 8 or 10 people from the building would be there. Some of the guys would bring a little radio and listen to the baseball game. And they talked, and some of them would knit, and they brought their little kids with them and strollers and baby carriages. They sat outside and they'd stay out because the houses, we didn't have air conditioning. Well, my parents had an air conditioner in the 50s, but my father made a decent living. Most of them didn't, and the houses would be hot towards the end of the day from the heat of the summer. So they'd leave their windows open, which, if you had screens, you were in good shape. If you weren't, you had mosquitoes in your house, which was miserable. So they'd leave the windows open with screens, and they would go downstairs and they would wait till some of them would go up 10:30, 11 o'clock. Some stayed out till 12, 1 o'clock, till the house would cool off, and they'd go upstairs and then put the fan on and go to sleep. Um, Most of them would go back upstairs between 10 and 11. So that was the drill. Mosquitoes were always a problem. Um, some of them would bring a thermos with a cold drink, and they'd sit there. It was they'd be out there for anywhere from 3 or 4 hours. They'd had a good time talking and kibitzing, and nobody was that infatuated with the news. World War II was long gone. The kids, Vietnam wasn't happening. Their kids weren't in Vietnam. It wasn't going on. And, they were basically not that worried about current events. They weren't worried about the economy. Uh, you know, there was plenty of work for people. There was no crime to speak of in New York then. Nothing happened. Once in a blue moon, somebody'd have a house burglary, but it was pretty rare. It was safe. I mean, old women would walk around at night by themselves. The stores were open till 9, 10 at night. They'd go out in the warm weather they were and go themselves and get some ice cream or whatever they needed and come walk back in the dark. Nothing happened. Um, if somebody was trying to upset the apple cart, the cops would get a hold of them, and they'd either beat them up and then throw them away, or they would and not arrest them. They'd just give them a good beating and tell them to get the heck out of here. Or if they wanted to, they would beat him up a little bit and take him to the station, and then they'd if he was really a bad guy, they'd bring him up the steps and they'd throw him down the station or something like that. They'd really pick on the guy, and they would be telling him, "You don't come back here." That was the message they want. So sometimes they may not bring him in; they would just beat him up and tell him he better never come back. They wouldn't break his legs or anything. They hit him with the stick in the stomach. They'd kick him if he fell down. They do stuff like that, enough to make it to scare him, They take the gun out and say, "You come back, I'm going to put six in you," and stuff like. They would do things like that, and the streets were safe. And of course, those are distant past where, believe it or not, we used to ride the subways all over the place when we were like 12 years old, 13 years old, all over the city in the subways and the buses, and nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. Uh, it was no problem. Uh, go to the park ourselves. It was easy going, So that was New York. So New York was actually when they came, which would be like early 1900s, they loved New York. You could get whatever you want. You had the subway was there, the buses and streetcars. They had all different kinds, horse-drawn, electric, whatever. They were there, so you had all kinds of transportation. None of the old. Well, my father's father learned how to drive, but most of them, like maybe 10, 20% of them knew how to drive. Very small amount. Most of them didn't drive, and they just took public transportation, or they used a taxi if they wanted to go first class. And they liked the place. They had cheap shopping. You were able to get a lot of goods cheap, and they had shopping in Orchard Street where they would buy clothing and stuff. And they had plenty of good food. And what did they have? They had the radio. They had each other. They had their synagogues if they wanted to go. And the schools were great, so they raised the kids and sent them to the schools, which were free, and they were very happy compared to where they came from Russia. They didn't mind living in an apartment, which is basically a hole in the wall. They had no problem with that. It had heat. Some of them made it and bought private houses in New York. There were people in my apartment building that had businesses that were doing well. They had made a lot of money, and they would decorate their apartment so nicely you didn't even think it was in the same building. But they didn't want to move out because they had all their friends and social life there, and they had a lot of money, and they didn't want to go to a richer neighborhood, so they'd buy a Cadillac, and they would decorate their house inside with great carpeting. They put wall covering on. They'd buy very expensive furniture, stick a chandelier in. They'd make it as nice as they could make it, but it was still small as all get up. And that's how they lived. So they didn't want to leave. So that was a weird, were there plenty of concentration camp survivors were there. So anyway, I'm going to keep doing the translations and showing you more and more things about it. And it helps you understand prophecy, and it helps you understand how they messed up the translations. And it's rather obvious it was obviously done intentionally. But the actual manuscripts were, you could probably glean out of it some of it, but not really, because Westcott and Hort was not good. But the worst thing was the English. The Greek wasn't all that bad. The English translations are terrible. Okay, so um, the Masoretic text actually isn't that bad. You know, Maybe the Leningrad's better, the one from 900 AD. It's not that bad, but we don't have a real Hebrew one. What we got a Septuagint, which I showed you the other day. I have one which has the Hebrew, the scraps, the fragments, the papyri, the leather they wrote on leather was written in Hebrew in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They got some of it, and it's missing pieces, but they put the little patches together meticulously, and they you can see them comparing it to a Greek Septuagint, and you can see the conflict there. That's called a critical text. It's a criticism, and you can see the conflict. So, is there a Hebrew Old Testament that is perfect and goes back before Yeshua? No. Is there a Greek Septuagint that goes back before Yeshua? Yeah, but it's built from fragments, but still it's built up. They got it. It's called Codex Vaticanus, basically, is the oldest one. But it's not pre Yeshua, it's 300 AD. But the Septuagints that it's based on goes back to 250 AD before Yeshua. So when you look at the fragments, you see that it's real. You can get a good witness, in my opinion, from the Septuagint. Is it perfect? No, I don't think so. Would it be good as the actual Hebrew scrolls that they used to keep with the tabernacle? No, I wouldn't think so. But from what we've got available, that's it. Greek, Greek, Greek. But look, the Salkinson's Hebrew New Testament isn't so bad. It's not so good. It's not so bad. The Codex Sinaiticus that has the New Testament in there isn't that bad either. And the Sweet Septuagint's not that bad. They're only running two Septuagint's in print. One is the Sweet, which is rare. The other one is what Sir Lancelot Brenton translated. It's a piece of junk. It comes from the Latin, the Vatican people, the Catholics. So um, I'm going to keep digging, but I'm running out of digs. There's only so much out there now. It might be possible that somebody out there wrote a real Bible and did a good job of it, but I don't believe it was ever published in a big publishing house, let alone digitized, let alone something you could have access to. Because so we still need a real translation, and I don't know how I could do that right now, but I can teach you and show you things that will teach you how they did it, and at the same time, maybe more importantly, teaching you the reality of the prophecy, so you understand how the truth of the Bible. And when you see what they're trying to cover up, it helps you understand what the real truth is. And you can see the replacement theology in there. So what they try to do is they try to put all the good stuff on the church and the bad stuff on Israel. And the stupidity is, well, either you're going to take the mark of the beast and go to the lake of fire, or you're going to get your head cut off. So what's that mean? No Jews are going to live? I don't know what they talk about. Anyway, let's do a prayer. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, I pray for, well, let me check first and see if I got any questions or somebody asking for prayer or something like that. Some people were putting bad things up in here. I get a lot of that. If you want to read more about the abomination and desolation, read Ezekiel chapter 8 and 9, and you'll see it there in greater detail. Of course, they don't like to tell you that, but you will. All nations deceived. The word is heathen. All heathen are deceived, non believers. Okay. So I'm going to continue doing this with different prophetic scriptures. I still toying with the idea of making an app with just prophetic scriptures in it, but I'm going to search the Lord more on this. That I could do. It's not going to be that much time to do that, but we'll see. All right. Maybe I should. So keep praying for me to get the right direction, what to do with this. Okay. What would an app do? It would probably wind up getting circulated, I hope, and then people might enjoy it and they might start giving offerings and then I could keep expanding my effort. But it's a big climb. I got to have a staff and computers. I can't do it all myself. Look, 70 people put the Hebrew New Testament into Greek, and it took them years. King James, let's see how long it took King James to get the Bible and how many people he used. That's interesting. I should find that out. We'll get it in a minute. AI will find it. How many years did it take King James to put together the King James Bible, and how many people worked on it? A massive, highly structured undertaking. He gives me the breakdown. It took approximately 7 years to complete. Around 1604, 1607. I think 1611 they came out with the first version. $47 to $54 scholars. See, I think that I could probably work with 8 to 12 people because we got the computers and AI. Maybe I could work with fewer, but it's not a one man show. It's worse. It's a lot of work. Okay. All right, I'll get a prayer for us and we'll do some spiritual warfare for us, okay? My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I pray for me and my wife and all the true believers and their households. I pray we would have your peace, safety, protection, and joy, your strength, stamina, and endurance from you. I pray for your healing and recuperative power in us so we keep getting healed where and when we need to be healed. And I pray for us and our animals and pets to be safe, secure, and happy, healthy, and whole. And I pray people stop trying to get Bueller in trouble. What they're trying to do with Bueller is get her to run away, and people in the community are trying to run down dogs and cats that are in the street, and they're doing it. and they call the police, the door catchers on the door. They're very nasty. So pray for that. And I pray also, my Heavenly Father, Jehovah, that for the peace of Jerusalem, I pray this government, the democracy thing goes away and we have the two witnesses running the country. And I pray, which would be Elijah and Enoch, and I pray for all of us that need a place to live, that we find a place to live easily and quickly, and those of us a good place to live, and those of us self-included, and those of us that, if needed, I don't know if it's needed. And those of us that have our own businesses, we would find clients and customers, and those of us that need a job, that we would find a good job and good work. And I pray we all have an adequate amount of money and then some extra. And I pray we would know the Bible better and understand the Bible better. And I pray you help me with these translations. And if there are good manuscripts or sources of Bibles, you would lead me to them quickly, and I would hear you and listen to you and find them. If not, and I have to write some, I pray you help me do that. And I pray for um I pray for all this, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Now, you can agree with that as a believer. And now I'm going to do some spiritual warfare. It'll be a little different now. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I loose from all, me and my wife and all the true believers and their families and households, any and all unclean spirits in any of the people. These unclean spirits must depart immediately, never return again, ever. And if there's any witchcraft, sorcery, spells, enchantments targeting any of these people, it is loosed off these people immediately, of no value, no effect, shall never return again, and no unclean spirit shall execute a similar type of witchcraft or the same kind forever. And if there's any darts that the enemy throws at any of us that are believers, will not land, it'll miss. And I submit all this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with it. Okay. I'm not that secure that we should do a lot of spiritual warfare against Trump right now, but definitely against Netanyahu and the Iranians. So keep that up. And I send my Shabbat Shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. And please pray that we get help. We can't fix the gate of defense ourselves. We get somebody to help us do it quickly. We'll have to pay them, I guess. But B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. So sometimes I think I ride on your prayers. So what else can I tell you? I had an update in my welfare quest. I saw one doctor about it yesterday, and it actually it went better than I ever thought it would go. So that's good news. And what else? Netanyahu's keeping his mouth shut a lot right now. I think he doesn't want to get into a situation where he crosses Trump. I think deep down inside, Netanyahu and most of his advisors are well aware of the fact that what Trump is trying to do with Iran ain't going to work. And it's just a matter of time until a war breaks out against Iran. That's how I feel. Because Iran's going to do dirty. They did last night. Look, they attacked several uh, commercial vessels, oil tankers, I expect, from India. Um, so they don't care who they make an enemy of. If India comes over here to shut Iran down, which could happen because they killed an Indian guy on a ship the other day. And, Modi is okay, Modi needs oil. India is a very commercial country. No oil, no commerce. He needs, okay, like China needs it. They're both very, very commercial, and they both have a very strong need for oil, with very large populations that also need oil. They need cars, they need heating, they need lots of things. Okay. So if Modi decides that he wants the Gulf open so he can get oil from these other countries, he might decide he wants to go on an excursion in the Persian Gulf. And he will nicely talk to Trump, peer to peer, not talk up to him. That I just want to let you know in confidence that I'm going and I'm going to be encountering Iran. And, I cooperate with you, and, we shouldn't step on each other's toes and all of that. And Trump's going to not push Modi around. And Modi could send, if he wants to send one or two aircraft carriers and 10 or 12 ships out there and fly a lot of planes there, he can. Now, Modi doesn't have a lot of stealth planes. He might not have any, but the radar situation in Iran is so diminished that he may not need them. Uh, and America keeps attacking their radar. And then Modi gets along with Netanyahu, so he might try to drag Netanyahu into it somehow to knock out more of their radar. And, he might tell Trump, well, I need help getting rid of the radar and their anti aircraft systems, and then I'll come in and mop it up for you. And then Trump might say, well, okay, but, I don't want you taking over their oil. I want to take over their oil. Well, Modi might get the idea he wants to take over their oil and not have to buy oil. It could happen. What if he calls Trump up and said, let's split the oil? Trump might say, well, I'm open. What do you want to do? And Modi is not going to be like Trump. Modi will go there and basically cut their heads off. Uh, Trump is poisoned from Netanyahu, I think, and he likes blowing up inanimate objects, command centers, launchers, missile factories, storage facilities, buildings. He doesn't like blowing up soldiers. Modi doesn't care. He'll blow up tens of thousands of them. He doesn't give a hoot about that. See, they're so big. How do you conquer a country with 1.5 billion people or whatever they got? How do you do it? If you run the statistics, you know, if Modi just has 1 million people in military and militia, you need about 3 million people to go in and occupy. But because the country's so big and has so many people, I think you'd probably need 2 million people. Nobody has that. So Modi can do what he wants. Nobody's going to come occupy him or knock him off or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. All right, kids, I'll keep you updated, and I'm out. Thanks.